Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to another stream. It's your host, Danny Haiphong. Happy Christmas Eve, if that is something you partake in. Happy holidays, or just happy days to all of you. How's everyone doing this evening? Please drop a like. Let me know how I sound in the chat. Hit that like button to ensure that the algorithm is boosted and we got more viewers here. We got a packed stream, everyone. First, want to just say hello to all the moderators this evening. Let me see who we got here today. Let me just pull that up again. Of course, I X'd it out. So yes, welcome everybody. How are you all doing this evening? We got a packed stream. Um, it's Christmas Eve for some. All right, it's Christmas Eve for some. We have Notary S here. We have Desert Mantis here moderating. Do we have any other? We have Ware Pilgrim here moderating as well. I think that is it for the moderators so far. Thanks for all of your help with this stream. Hello to all the viewers here, especially those who are paid subscribers on Patreon, Substack, YouTube, whether you buy me a coffee, PayPal, Super Chat, what have you. Appreciate all of you as well. Anyone who's come in this evening to spend Christmas Eve, if that's something you partake in with me. We have a lot to get to. All right, we have a lot to get to. But as you can see, I'm not necessarily in festive colors, but you could view this black as the lumps of coal that U.S. NATO puppets like Zelensky, the U.S. NATO axis as a whole is receiving on this holiday season, because the theme for today is that these lumps of coal, these what you could call huge L's, are piling up for the empire. And that's what we're going to talk about this evening. We're going to go from Ukraine to the Red Sea. We might end with China. That's where we're going to go today. All right. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notifications bell. Please go to the video description to support this work. Best place to go is Patreon. There's a lot of perks there, a free PDF copy of my book. You get to suggest guests as well as ask questions of guests. You get to submit questions to me. I tend to answer them on stream if that's something that you would like. And there are other features as well. YouTube, Substack are also great options. And if you need to do one-time options because that works better for you, all of that from Buy Me a Coffee to PayPal and more is in the video description. All right, everybody. So on this Christmas Eve, how about we get started? Okay, let me know where all of you are coming from. I see some folks from Russia. It's late or early in Russia to be viewing this, but nonetheless, I am very much appreciated. I hope you all are having fun tonight. I hope you all are taking it easy, relaxing, settling in. We're going to have a good time tonight. But how about we just get started right away. Let's talk about Ukraine. All right. There's a big lump of coal in the holiday stockings for Ukraine, especially for Ukraine's leadership. Now, the situation in Ukraine is quite grim, and we've been covering that here quite frequently. Now, however, there appears to be more and more admissions coming from the Western mainstream media. But these admissions are contradictory in many respects. As you can see from Western mainstream media coverage, they cannot escape the collective West, cannot escape any longer the fact that Ukraine is not in any position to leverage or to gain anything from Russia at this point. And now all of the aid discussions, all of the future assistance that the collective West may provide has shrunk or has gone away altogether, because the tide has indeed turned and it is not in favor of Ukraine. But we can begin by just viewing here the Associated Press kind of holiday report on Ukraine, where it says Ukraine is ending the year disappointed by stalemate with Russia. This is a key word, and anxious about aid from allies. Now, this word stalemate is used quite often now, but what they are really describing is the fact that Russia has achieved its objectives of protecting the Donbass and that Ukraine is no longer making any forward movement. In fact, Ukraine is in retreat in many places, such as Avdiivka and other key points on that front line. But here it says the year started with high hopes. 2023, they're talking about, for Ukrainian troops planning a counteroffensive against Russia. It ended with disappointment on the battlefield, an increasingly somber mood among troops, and anxiety about the future of Western aid for Ukraine's war effort. In between, there was a short-lived rebellion in Russia, a dam collapse in Ukraine, and the spilling of much blood on both sides of the conflict. 22 months since it invaded, Russia has about one-fifth of Ukraine in its grip, and the roughly 1,000-kilometer front line has barely budged this year. A crunch has come away from the battlefield in Western countries that have championed Ukraine's struggle against its much bigger adversary. Political deliberations over billions in financial aid are increasingly strained. Vladimir Putin is playing the waiting game 2 years into a war that has proved to be a costly miscalculation by the Kremlin. So you see, this is how they are spinning the narrative now. And I'm not going to read too much more. But basically, what they are doing is saying that Ukraine has lost, but this was costly for Russia too. That equals stalemate. When in fact, while Russia would never say that the conflict in Ukraine has been uncostly, that it hasn't cost anything, it would be a huge exaggeration to say that Russia miscalculated, given that it had planned all the way back during the first infusion of NATO aid, which bucked the trend for a peace deal in March and April 2022. After that happened, Russia decided that only a war of attrition was going to meet Russia's objectives at this point in time. That's what they have been doing since 2022 of late spring. And that is exactly why Russia has made such gains and has been able to force this narrative change. But this is what the Western mainstream media, the collective West, the spin artists, the warmongers, the hawks that continue to want to push the conflict in Ukraine, push it forward to illogical conclusions. This is what they are trying to sell to us, a stalemate, because it's costly for Russia too. And so Putin is wagering the West's support will gradually crumble, fractured by political divisions, eroded by war fatigue, and distracted by other demands, such as China's menacing of Taiwan and war in the Middle East. So, in effect, you can see the mood, the narrative has changed. This is a year-end summary of what's going on in Ukraine, and it's not looking too good, the Associated Press is indicating. So the international political outlook could turn sharply in Putin's favor after next November elections in the U.S., by far Ukraine's biggest military supplier, and where some Republican candidates are pushing to wind down the war. Nearly half the U.S. public believes the country is spending too much on Ukraine, according to a poll published in November by the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research. The political landscape on both sides of the Atlantic is changing, says Charles Kupchan, a senior fellow at the CIA Council of Foreign Relations think tank in Washington, D.C. Transatlantic solidarity has been steady, but I don't think it will remain steady forever. So we don't even have to go much further than that, because that is essentially what is the situation in terms of how the ruling elite, how the warmongers are looking at the conflict in Ukraine. They're looking at it as right now a huge setback, a major setback. Really, we could call a humiliating defeat, but it's costly for Russia too. So now I want to play you Brian Berletic, because he'll be back on the show very soon. But Brian Berletic had a great commentary on what's going on in Ukraine on the battlefield and why it's a huge mistake to call this a stalemate, right? What he outlines here shows us it's a huge mistake to call this a stalemate. And I'm going to also back up what he says through all kinds of media reports. that show that actually this is not a stalemate. Even the collective West's media, mainstream media, is admitting it is not a stalemate, that their headlines, that their articles, their reports are all contradictory. They're trying to confuse us. So here we go. Here is what Brian Berletic had to say.
So what did Russia actually do to stop the Ukrainian offensive? Russia used a combination of landmines, artillery, drones, attack helicopters, warplanes dropping glide bombs, rockets, including guided rockets, anti-tank guided missiles. These could be launched by teams of infantry on very small mobile vehicles. Most of this was done in the security zone ahead of all of these defenses. The security zone is a no man's land between your frontline defenses and the enemy's frontline defenses. You establish a security zone and you try to wipe out as much of the enemy as possible before they actually come to your defenses. And this is actually where Russia stopped the Ukrainian offensive, and they did it through overwhelming superior firepower, both in quantity and quality. Just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, this is from this BBC article about the Russian entrenchments, and they show you these layered defenses, the anti-tank ditch, the Dragon's Teeth, the trench network. They show artillery positions all the way back here. The problem that Ukraine faces is firepower. It doesn't matter if they're trying to breach these defenses or they're the ones manning these defenses. They simply do not have enough firepower. If it was the Ukrainians in these positions and let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, let's just say 5 artillery positions, if Russia outguns Ukraine 10-1 in artillery, that means they have 5 times 10, 50 artillery pieces for Ukraine's 5. Some people say it's maybe 7-1 or 5-1. It doesn't matter. That is Ukraine's problem. If Russia has an overabundance of firepower that is able to target Ukrainian artillery, whether they're on the offensive or on the defensive, Ukraine is going to run out of guns and rounds sooner. And the same goes for anti-tank guided missiles, FPV drones, tanks, and everything else that's on the battlefield. Russia has all of these systems that they used on the defensive. They also have all of these systems they can use going on the offensive. And when I say offensive, I don't mean big arrow offensives like Ukraine tried to carry out. I mean this slow grinding, incremental, creeping forward along the battle line, using overwhelming firepower to just grind down Ukrainian defenses, which is exactly why building defenses is going to force Russia to conduct the operation in this manner. But that's how they're already conducting it. And I don't.
So just to stop it there, I mean, this is the expertise I do not have to understand why the disadvantages that Ukraine has on the battlefield, why it translates into these huge defeats just by looking at the terrain with which Ukraine and Russia are fighting within. And so this is really key to understand that these disadvantages that the Western mainstream media is even admitting to with Ukraine militarily have a huge impact on how things have gone. And a lot of times I feel like this conflict has been talked about as if it were some kind of video game, but the reality is quite ugly and it's quite brutal. So here we go.
I don't think building additional defenses now is going to significantly slow Russia down. Russia has military aviation. They can drop these 500-kilogram glide bombs on Ukrainian positions. They have 1,000. I think I've heard 1,500-kilogram glide bombs being used. They also have lighter ones that can go further. They have ballistic missiles like the Iskander with a 500-kilometer range. This is a longer range than the ATACMS, the longest range ATACMS that the U.S. could send to Ukraine and haven't yet, at 300 kilometers. They also have cruise missiles and long-range kamikaze drones. The Garan 2, for example, can reach virtually anywhere inside Ukraine. They also have the shorter-range Lancet kamikaze drones. We've seen these used as counter-battery fire against Ukrainian radar sets, artillery positions, massed troops. They also have FPV kamikaze drones. We always hear about Ukrainian FPV kamikaze drones. As I pointed out, there are Western articles now admitting, Ukraine does have these FPV drones. They're very effective.
So look at that. Ukraine outgunned 7-1 when it comes to drones. And you've seen the Western mainstream media hype this up. So here Brian continues. I just wanted to point out that they're literally saying outgunned in drones. And this is modern warfare. Mark Sloboda was on the show talking about how important it is to have advantages in the high-tech, state-of-the-art mode of warfare with which this conflict is being fought.
Effective. They destroy Russian troop concentrations and Russian armor, but Russia also has them. They also have them in just greater quantities, 7-1. So whatever damage Ukraine is doing to Russia, Russia is able to do more so to Ukraine. Ukraine has HIMARS. We always hear about how great HIMARS is. Russia has the Tornado S, again, in greater quantities in terms of launchers and missiles. They also have a longer range than the HIMARS, the Tornado S. In addition to all of that, Russia has superior numbers of artillery systems, both the guns and the rocket launchers and the mortar platforms firing the rounds and superior numbers of these rounds themselves. And again, we hear all of these different admissions by the Western media, anywhere from a 5-1 to a 10-1 artillery advantage over Ukraine. When you put all of this together, Russia simply has greater quantitative and qualitative means to strike at, destroy Ukrainian defenses and the troops manning them.
So I just wanted to play that because Brian Berletic demonstrates, listing off all of the advantages that Russia has militarily, which has led to what the Western mainstream media is now admitting. And not just militarily now, they're admitting the entire conflict has essentially stalled or become a stalemate. Some have said it is actually gone completely awry. And so now the narrative has changed, and it's changed because Russia is superior, and Vladimir Putin's leadership, the leadership of Russia, has been superior to that of NATO, US-backed Ukraine entirely. And that's what is critical here to note. Now, it's important to continue to reiterate this point because this isn't just something that Brian Berletic is saying. It is what the Western mainstream media is saying. With Western aid stalls, says the Washington Post, Ukrainian troops run low on artillery shells. Ukrainian forces are suffering from a shortage of artillery shells on the front line, prompting some units to cancel planned assaults, soldiers said this week, stoking fears over how long Kiev's troops will be able to hold their ground against continuing Russian attacks. The ammunition shortage is deepening the already palpable anxiety. That's the second time we've seen anxiety in the Ukrainian capital as U.S. and European aid stalls and winter sets in. Our gunners are given a limit of shells for each target, says a member of the 128th Mountain Assault Brigade fighting in the southeastern Zaporozhye region. If the target there is smaller, for example, a mortar position, then they give 5 to 7 shells in total. The guys are tired, very tired, he said. They're still motivated, but many people understand that they have no other choice. But you can't win a war only on motivation. You should have some kind of numerical advantage. And with weapons and weapon systems, it's only getting worse. How long can we last? It's hard to say, but it can't be long. Everyone understands this. They say they're only firing just 10 to 20 shells per day at enemy targets, which previously used to average 50 shells and sometimes 90. So this is how bad it's gotten. It's a persistent problem where they're being outgunned in all of these key areas of artillery and ammunition, 7-1, 8-1, and it could be even worse than that. But if we continue to look at the disadvantages, they are also coming up around manpower. This sounds great, right? Ukraine is going to see a total mobilization in 2024. Next year will be worse for the country than 2022 and 2023 combined, though. So it sounds great, a total mobilization to contain Russia, said Vasily Samovar, commanding the aviation and air defense brigades of the 3rd Separate Storm Brigade, telling Dnipro TV on Saturday, Ukrainian media. He admitted that Russia is superior in many aspects, ranging from economic might to personnel reserves. Kiev is still reeling from a failed summer counteroffensive, and according to Russia Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, Ukraine has lost an estimated 383,000 soldiers since the start of the conflict. In his interview with Dnipro Station, Samovar said that the Ukrainians should prepare for total mobilization in a cold winter. The next year will unfortunately be much harder than 2023 and 2022 combined. Hear that? They are proposing to call up almost 500,000 people this coming year. That is to essentially send them all to die. But I think we need to temper expectations for Ukraine, even at this very low level. Because if we look at what reports are saying, for example, in the Wall Street Journal, this is what they had to say about this question of manpower. Okay, it's not so, and I'm just going to pull up the article now. It's not even this good. Okay, here we go. Ukraine's frontline troops are getting older. Physically, I can't handle this. This is from the Wall Street Journal. During a break from fighting the Russians, so this is what they're saying. All right, this is a story. 3 recruitment officers accosted a stocky, gray-haired 47-year-old outside the barbershop in his small hometown, ordered him to get in a car and detain him for 2 days in a dark room at the local draft center until he signed up. I got my haircut at training camp. Now known by his military call Dubak, the former electrical engineer offered to serve as a technician in the rear, but to get that job, you have to pay bribes. Instead, he was sent to join an infantry unit depleted by months of hard fighting. His battalion of 47th Mechanized Brigade is defending the city of Avdiivka against waves of Russian assaults, currently the biggest battle in Russia's relentless war on Ukraine. Physically, I can't handle this, Dubak said of frontline combat. I'm deeply disappointed I'm no longer 20. Ukraine needs to rebuild its battered army. The infantry, which bears the brunt of deaths and injuries, is chronically short of men after resisting Russia's full-blown invasion. The most highly motivated fighters volunteered early. Those who have been killed or wounded say they are exhausted. Ukraine now relies on the draft and sometimes on rounding up men to replenish ranks. Meanwhile, Russia can draw on a much larger population to replace its losses. A rickety draft system isn't mobilizing Ukraine's manpower effectively, providing the quantity and quality of troops needed, or sharing the burden fairly across Ukrainian society, many soldiers and military analysts say. A combination of corruption, exemptions, political caution has protected much of Ukraine's urban middle classes against having to fight in the cold and muddy trenches on the front line. A disproportionate share of draftees are middle-aged men like Dubak. Often they're from villages and small towns that were too poor to buy their way out. This is the situation. This is who you have going to the front line. Increasingly poor, destitute people who are being forced, literally forced. That story was someone who was captured and forced to fight. He didn't want to fight on the front lines. He wanted to lend his expertise somewhere where he wasn't going to die. And Ukraine is sending him out to die because they need him to go out to die, because they don't have the ability. They don't have the ability to replenish manpower to this extent. 383,000 Ukrainians killed, according to Russia. But you remember Ursula von der Leyen at midpoint of 2023, she said 100,000, a vast undercount. 90,000 more were estimated in the counteroffensive alone after she said that. So we're talking somewhere between the lower estimate of 200,000 Ukrainians, the Russian estimate of 300,000 Ukrainians, and probably more. And now they want to recruit this fantastical number, this mythical number of 500,000 plus more Ukrainians to fight on the front line and die. It is an absolute tragedy. It is a catastrophe. And now, what the collective West is doing now, here's the Bloomberg. The whole entirety of the collective West media is weighing in on this conflict, and they're saying a variety of things. There's a lot of hand-wringing about the doom and gloom because, as you can see from the Associated Press to the Washington Post to Wall Street Journal, they're all sounding the alarm on many different elements of why Ukraine is struggling so badly. And here you have the Bloomberg editorial board basically saying, "Oh, no. Even though the country is struggling to make gains and Western resolve is fraying, the answer isn't to do less, right?" So I'm not even going to read this whole thing, but basically all this is saying is it is misguided to ignore the sacrifices of the Ukrainian people, and abandoning the war effort now is going to give credibility and endanger credibility to Putin at the expense of the West and endanger democracies at supporting Ukraine. So it's true that Ukrainian forces failed to advance this year as much as leaders inside and outside the country had hoped for. Russia's defense capabilities and willingness to absorb huge casualties. Now, this is a copy and paste. They keep saying this. It's not true. Russia has not absorbed huge casualties. They've absorbed casualties, and they're far bigger than Russia would like. They're not huge, though. They're likely to be anywhere from 15% to maybe even less of that what Ukraine has engendered. So, and while there's much finger pointing between Ukraine and the West about tactics and decision making, the supply of weaponry was too little, too late to match the ambitions of the counter offensive. The answer isn't to do less, though. Putin shows no interest in negotiations, which isn't true, and I'll show you why. In a history of not abiding by agreements he made, which is also not true. He has every reason to wait for the U.S. and European resolve to collapse so that he can complete his objective for subjugating Ukraine. In this war of attrition, the West must adapt its response to provide more sustainable support over the long term. So essentially what they're advocating is a war of attrition themselves, turning this into a permanent war in the coming months, giving more, all these systems, ammunition, long-range systems, air defense systems, fighting aircraft, etc., more flow of arms, ramping up production, and hoping for the best, right? That's what it is. Fighting a war of attrition on your own. And here you have more. You have the Hill. Can the U.S. afford to lose Ukraine, right? So constantly, over and over and over again. Now, the collective West wants us to believe that Vladimir Putin both does not want to negotiate and wants to destroy Ukraine, and also wants to negotiate. Get this. So Putin quietly signals he is open to a ceasefire in Ukraine. Despite his bravado in public, the Kremlin has indicated interest in striking a deal to halt the war, so long as it could still declare victory. This is what he said at a press conference. He said that Russia's goals have not changed. Addressing generals, he boasted that Ukraine was so beleaguered that Russia's invading troops were doing what we want. We won't give up what's ours. If they want to negotiate, let them negotiate. But in a recent back-channel diplomacy, Mr. Putin has sent a different message. He's ready to make a deal. Putin has been signaling through intermediaries since at least September that he's open to a ceasefire that freezes the fighting along current lines, far short of his ambitions to dominate Ukraine, says two former Russian officials close to the Kremlin and American international officials who have received messages from Putin's envoys. Is this true? We don't know. But at the same time, the spin is still just ridiculous because what they're trying to tell us is that Vladimir Putin both wants to destroy Ukraine outright, but also wants to negotiate. They don't mention the Minsk Accords, which Vladimir Putin followed to the T. He didn't arm Ukraine to the teeth. He didn't supply weapons to the Donbass republics to fight against the Ukrainian military, which was shelling, bombing, and attacking poor Russian-speaking ethnic Russian villages. He wasn't doing that during the Minsk Accords. So this is false. Russia did follow the Minsk Accords, and Russia was the one that signed the 2022 spring peace agreement, which the collective West undermined and Ukraine undermined by failing to go along with it in March, April 2022. So they're trying to have you believe that Putin does not want to negotiate, while at the same time indicating that he might. And now Kit Clarenberg broke this. He said there's a plane parked at Dulles, DC for 54 hours. Absolutely was not there to rotate diplomats. Negotiations long and no doubt intense. Putin indicating interest in a ceasefire is 100% related. Zelensky refusing to will trigger a U.S. approved final push by Russia. Kiev is finished. And here is the image of the Russian flight, the Russian jet of landing in DC. So there have been rumors for quite a long time that the United States and Russia are talking through back channels to try to figure out what to do about this conflict. And Kit Clarenberg of the Gray Zone is saying it very well could be true. We can't confirm those reports from Kit, but we do know that he is a reliable journalist over there at the Gray Zone. But the point here is that there are indications that Russia is willing to negotiate in good faith, but they're not willing to give up gains that they've made, and they're also not willing to give up their objectives. So even if there was a temporary pause, even if there was a peace agreement, a ceasefire, Russia is going to probably unlikely agree to anything until those objectives are met. So all in all, a huge lump of coal this holiday season for Ukraine stocking. It is absolutely finished, this conflict on the for Ukraine. It could go on for a long time, and Mark Slobodka has been on, and many others have been on, saying this could go on for a while, but the results will not change. There's going to be no denying which side is going to win. It's just a matter of when that will happen. When will Russia be victorious? This is the narrative that they do not want you to know in the Western mainstream media. This is the narrative. This is the fact that the United States' political class does not want you to be exposed to. They do not want to confront their own shortcomings, limitations, and total and utter defeat at the hands of Russia, because that changes everything. That changes everything about what they've been trying to do for now nearly a decade as we enter 2024. But there's no doubt about it. Ukraine is getting more than a lump of coal in its stocking this holiday season. Ukraine is getting the final rudiments, the final patches of complete and total defeat sewn onto it. And that is only going to become clearer in 2024 as we enter this new year. All right, everybody. So that is the Ukraine story. So I'm going to get to the next story very soon. Okay. Keep hitting that like button. Keep hitting that subscribe button. Keep hitting that notifications bell. All right. It's going to be very interesting to think about Putin settling, really, at any point. But at the same time, in many cases, Russia's already won what they've wanted. They've already gotten what they wanted in many respects. I don't believe Russia wants any piece of land. I think Ukraine is in such bad shape now that Russia would much rather either continue the fighting in order to gain even more leverage regionally over Ukraine, or stop the fighting and allow for what needs to happen, which is the rebuilding of the Donbass and the fortification of what now is Russia. But we will see. We will see how that transpires, because there's still talks about Odessa and so much more. So keep hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button. Also, go to the video description, support this channel on Patreon, on Substack, on YouTube. Buy me a coffee, send me a PayPal. Whatever you can do to support independent media on this holiday season is much appreciated. But we're going to get to the next story. We're going to talk about the Red Sea. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I've been talking about it a lot. I was talking about it with Scott Ritter, Larry Johnson. I was talking about it with Pepe Escobar. So now we're going to talk about the actual unraveling of this thing. Because this thing actually unraveled. Operation Prosperity Guardian. A huge joke, mind you. Operation Prosperity Guardian. Absolutely a joke. But we got to get to that joke because it is actually quite impactful. Because the conflict, the war on Gaza, the onslaught on Gaza by Israel is now taking a turn. And I believe in many cases it is because of what Yemen has done. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So let's get right to it, okay? We have 1753 still here. Keep hitting that like button. Let's boost to get more in the stream. How many likes do we got? Not 791 to 1761. All right, let's get that up. Let's move that up to 1,000 likes, everybody. Really appreciate all of you coming through today. But let's get started, and then we can finish the stories. I got maybe one more after this one, and then we will have some fun, okay, to close the night. So here we go. Operation Prosperity Guardian has been a complete and total failure. What the United States touted as a highway patrol for the Red Sea in response to the Houthis, to Ansar Allah's defense of Gaza via a blockade of this key trading route, has already come apart. It was supposed to be 20 plus countries strong with, say, Chile's and the UK and Spain and Italy, etc., all part of what was supposed to be this powerful force of arms meant to respond to the freedom of navigation that was being suppressed by the Houthis' missiles and their broad range of attacks on the Red Sea. Now we are seeing the real results of this, and the real results are quite humbling, to say the least. I mean, this is what it looks like for the empire to be dealt a critical blow. So the Cradle reports that cracks are forming in NATO as U.S. claims over 20 nations on board for anti-Yemen coalition, but doubts remain about NATO member Spain's involvement in the Red Sea coalition, as the new leftist government did not take kindly to the launch of Operation Prosperity Guardian. So the Pentagon was saying that we've had 20 nations sign up to participate. We'll allow other countries defer to them to talk about their participation. So this was from the Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder. He said that it's a coalition of the willing, that each country can contribute what they can. In some cases, that will include vessels. In other cases, just staff like Canada sent and other types of support. Greece and Australia, the latest additions to the task force, which was launched officially as Operation Prosperity Guardian. Upon launching, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that it would have military support from Britain, Bahrain, Canada, France, Italy, Netherlands, Seychelles, and Spain. However, full involvement of some of Washington's NATO partners remains in doubt, particularly in Spain, as official announcements about Madrid's involvement have seesawed over the past week. Spanish officials confirmed support of protecting Israeli-linked vessels on December 19th as part of the EU Naval Force Operation Atalanta, a counter-piracy military operation off the Horn of Africa. This was also confirmed by commander of Operation Atalanta, Spanish Vice Admiral Ignacio Villanueva Serrano. Despite initial confirmation, local reports on December 20th cited military sources saying Madrid has made no decision about mobilizing any more ships near the Bab el-Mandab Strait. The only ship committed to the new U.S.-led alliance was described as the frigate Victoria, which had been providing support for Bulgarian cargo vessels taken by pirates weeks ago. A top branch of the Spanish Armed Forces backed these reports, saying that their decision for their possible participation in Prosperity Guardian would be made clear after taking into account all circumstances within the EU framework. So there's Spain, okay, Other EU nations have also shown different levels of wariness about backing the US's military actions against Yemen, as many recognize the threat of escalating tensions with groups acting in support of Palestinians in Gaza. The UK offered to deploy its HMS Diamond destroyer, while nations like the Netherlands and Norway confirmed that only naval officers will participate. Italy's defense ministry said on Tuesday that one of its frigates would join the Western Alliance. However, Rome confirmed this would be considered part of an existing EU naval operation, not Prosperity Guardian. And the same thing with France. French defense ministry also announced its support for US-led efforts, but clarified that its ships would remain under French command. Paris would not confirm whether or not it would deploy more vessels to the region. So this this is coming. So this is coming as Ansar Allah has in Sana'a in Yemen has recently threatened to strike all Saudi and Emirati oil fields in Riyadh if Saudi Arabia and UAE decide to take part in a pro-Israel alliance. Nevertheless, we have the US still trying to push Saudi Arabia, but there have been no budging. So essentially, there's huge cracks in this alliance. It is not as strong as it was made out to be. We also have reports in the Times of India telling us similarly that they are getting limited backing from some allies. Okay. So the United States is assembling, this is the Times of India, a naval coalition called Operation Prosperity Guardians, but some countries have not confirmed their participation, while others said their efforts to help protect the Red Sea commercial traffic will be as part of an existing naval agreement rather than US-led operation. So lack of details and clarity over what countries are doing has added to confusion for shipping companies, some of which have been rerouting vessels away from the area after the attacks, which the Houthis are saying is a response to the Israeli assault on Gaza. So, as I said, they're talking, Spain, Italy, France, Britain, Greece, other countries. They are not necessarily participating in this full throttle. Spain, we will not participate unilaterally in a Red Sea operation. Britain said that the coalition will operate as part of the US-led CMF, but only sending one destroyer. Greece said Thursday it would send a naval frigate to the Red Sea that would participate in Operation Prosperity Guardian, but other countries are basically saying they're only going to send officers or they're going to run things under their command, such as Italy. So limited backing. This is essentially a victory for the Houthis. This has already fallen apart. This Operation Prosperity Guardian was supposed to be the United States basically pounding its chest and saying we still have the ability to organize a large majority of so-called allied countries into another coalition of the willing, which existed in wars like Afghanistan, like what transpired in Yemen for nearly 10 years during a Saudi-led assault. This was supposed to be another example of how the U.S. could use its influence to stop a threat. And the Houthis are indeed a threat because what they have done is changed everything. Essentially, they have changed the terms of what's going on in Gaza. They are still, this is Jerusalem Post reporting that the Houthis are still targeting naval vessels from the United States and commercial ships off the coast of Yemen. So Operation Prosperity Guardian has done absolutely nothing to stop the Houthis. They are not afraid. They have announced that they will take out all of the oil tankers, all of the oil installations in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. If they participate in this conflict, they will continue to reroute, to capture, to strike at any vessels attempting to aid Israel. So here we have the Houthi militia, which they always say is Iran-backed, but Iran, there's been no evidence that Iran directly supports Ansar Allah beyond supporting their overall objective for a sovereign Yemen. That is what they support. Hours after an Iranian drone attack targeted an Israeli-linked chemical tanker in the Indian Ocean, U.S. Central Command CENTCOM announced early Sunday morning that the Houthi militia launched missiles and drones toward a U.S. naval vessel and two commercial vessels. Throughout the day, the Houthis launched two anti-ship ballistic missiles from Yemen into international shipping lanes in the Red Sea, according to CENTCOM on December 23rd. Additionally, the USS Laboon shot down 4 drones the Houthis launched towards it as it was patrolling the Red Sea in the south as part of Operation Prosperity Guardian. A Norwegian flagged, owned, and operated chemical oil tanker, the M/V Blaminen, reported that a Houthi drone detonated near it in the MV Salaba, a Gabon-owned Indian flag crude oil tanker, reported it was hit by a one-way drone attack. No injuries were reported in either incident. The USS Laboon responded to 2 distress calls from the vessels. These attacks represent the 14th and 15th attacks on commercial shipping by Houthi militants since October 17th. The attacks are the latest affecting maritime traffic in the region as threats by the Houthis and Iranian officials escalate. So they're hitting Israeli vessels and tankers. They're hitting everyone who is associated with doing trade with Israel as it conducts its massacre in Gaza. And it's having a real effect. It's having a real effect both on the conflict and this is why it's so heroic and so incredible what they've done. Not only is the coalition fraying, but we are seeing real results from this blockade. Here you have Time Magazine, how and why Yemen's Houthi rebels are poised to seriously disrupt the global economy. And I'm just going to read you a bit of this. It says that 5 of the largest shipping firms announced they would redirect their containers from the Bab el-Mandab Strait, the strategic waterway through which ships must pass their way to the Suez Canal, and which handles 10% of all global commerce. Following the announcement, traffic through the Red Sea dropped 35%. This is after the Houthis started attacking on November 19th, and they escalated in December, where their missiles are basically aiming at several passing ships and hitting one. And so the ships are saying, "Oh no, we can't handle this. We're not going to handle this. We're going to reroute." And they are literally, not only are the insurance companies raising their interest rates in order to make more money off of this because the risks have gone up, but also they are rerouting to go all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, the south of Africa, to go all the way around to ship their goods, which has, of course, raised the shipping time, which has thus led companies to raise their prices. So following all of this activity, traffic through the Red Sea has dropped 35%. Commerce hasn't blocked completely since most ships can opt for the longer and safer route around Africa, but the Houthis have increased the cost of shipping globally, imposing additional costs to commerce at a time when trouble at the Panama Canal has already made shipping more complicated, and central banks worry about an inflationary spike. If the Houthi blockade continues, the cost to consumers and the impact on local states will be considerable. In the event that the Red Sea is closed long-term, Europe and states in the Mediterranean will bear the brunt of the damage. Some countries in North Africa, such as Tunisia and Algeria, are also particularly vulnerable as they do most of their Asian trade through the Suez Canal. Israel, the Houthis' intended target, has suffered already as it's seen traffic through its southern port of Eilat come to a halt more than 85%. Though the port's relatively small side has made the overall impact fairly manageable. So Egypt is the big loser, which depends on fees through the Suez Canal for much of its currency earnings. Under strain of the humanitarian situation in Gaza and moribund economy, Egypt's authoritarian president Sisi may face major financial pressure if traffic through the canal slows. So roughly 12% of seaborne trade of crude oil and refined products goes through the Red Sea as well. So as you can see, Time Magazine, a heavily establishment Western mainstream media outlet, U.S. mainstream media outlet, is also sounding the alarm. So the economic situation with regard to the blockade has been hugely effective. The economic impact. This is what the Houthis wanted. They wanted the basically the aggressor countries, Europe, the United States, Israel, to feel the impact of this blockade so that the conflict on Gaza, the war on Gaza Israel is waging, would be impacted as well. And it has been. It definitely has been. And let me show you how. So Europe has finally, right? So Europe, the United States, we're going to get into the limitations of this because it is not all ideal. But Europe's ministers call for a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. Here's what that means. This comes during the Red Sea debacle. So you have UK Foreign Minister David Cameron and German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock expressing an editorial for the Sunday Times their backing of a sustainable ceasefire, quote unquote, in its war against Gaza. Cameron and Baerbock highlighted the difference between a sustainable ceasefire and immediate ceasefire, which has been widely called elsewhere. Let us be clear, we do not think that calling right now for a general and immediate ceasefire, hoping it somehow becomes permanent, is the way forward. Instead, they envision reaching a peace that lasts for days, years, and generations. So this is in response to what's going on in the Red Sea. But of course, what they're trying to do, which is similar to what the United States has done at the UN, which I'm about to show you, is to say we're not for an immediate ceasefire right now, but down the line, we definitely want a ceasefire that is long lasting. It's their way of saying Israel can have their cake and we can have ours too, but we need to get the situation under control. Really, it isn't getting anything under control because there is no ceasefire on the way, but there are huge changes to the war on Gaza, which I'm going to show you very soon. But essentially, okay, there has been movement, though, in this regard. Okay, there has been movement. UN approves watered-down resolution on aid to Gaza without call for suspension to hostilities. So this is a real sticking point, okay? The United States is feeling massive pressure because of what the Houthis are doing. It's not just the Houthis. I mean, it's the overall situation that what the Houthis have done have added on another layer of pressure that was already there based on international public opinion, based on the UN General Assembly, the UN Security Council, all pushing in the vast majority for a humanitarian ceasefire that's immediate in Gaza. And the United States has felt massive pressure to not be the only one, which it has been, opposing it. So UN Security Council adopted a watered-down resolution Friday calling for immediate, speedy deliveries of aid to hungry and desperate civilians in Gaza without an original plea for an urgent suspension of hostilities between Israel and Hamas. The long-delayed vote in the 15-member council was 13-0, with the United States and Russia abstaining. The U.S. abstention avoided a third American veto of a Gaza resolution following the surprise October 7th attacks inside Israel. Russia wanted stronger language restored. The U.S. did not. So essentially, it was a resolution that does not allow for the conflict, the hostilities to stop right away, but it says that aid should be gone in a much speedier manner. But Russia abstained because it's essentially toothless, which it is. This is not going to stop the Houthis. The Houthis want an immediate end to Israel's onslaught. So this isn't it. But it does show that what the Houthis are doing, the economic pressure they're bringing to bear, is causing some movement, and it's going in that direction. And it's completely in line with international public opinion, which means Yemen is with the people. The Houthis, Ansar Allah, are with the people. The United States, not so much. And Russia, good on Russia, of course, to be one of the two major multipolar countries in the UN Security Council to veto it. So this is big, but it gets bigger. So this conflict is about to change dramatically, all right? Israel is already talking about a new phase of the war on Gaza, and this doesn't necessarily have much to do with what Ansar Allah is doing, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Israel is recognizing its own capabilities, and I think it has something to do with the fact that it does not have the ability to achieve any of its objectives in this conflict, in lieu of the fact that there is both a regional and global movement against what Israel is doing. And Ansar Allah has put on, I think, the most significant pressure in that regard. So the Cradle reports that Israel is withdrawing ground troops from Gaza in a new phase of the war. So according to a report, this new phase will reportedly focus on continued air raids across the besieged enclave, where the proportional death toll has surpassed modern conflicts in less than 3 months. So yes, this is not peace, But essentially what this means is troops are leaving Gaza with their tails between their legs because they cannot fight the guerrilla war, and they cannot escalate through manpower, through combat on the ground regionally in the way that their leaders, the Israeli leaders, have been intimating and indicating, have been trying to sow in the minds of Americans, Israelis, and the collective West by saying that they can stand up to Hezbollah, they can stand up to any force, right, that supports Palestine. Actually, that's not true. This is not true because they are leaving and switching to. This is reminiscent of Vietnam, when the United States during the Paris Accords basically went for Vietnamization, and all that meant was that the U.S. was going to fight rather than sending hundreds of thousands of troops into Vietnam. It's going to start to slowly withdraw them and move entirely and primarily into the air to try to essentially smoke out the Vietnamese. That's what they're going to try to do now in Gaza. So civilian casualties are going to remain high. But this is a big shift. All right. This is a big shift because I think what it shows is that they are running out of time. And this is another step toward the eventual defeat of Israel in this conflict. And Ansar Allah, again, has played a role in this because that economic pressure, both on Israel and in the wider world situation, is playing a huge role in the international pressure that Israel must feel right now. The Israeli army says a report from the Israel's Broadcasting Authority is preparing to move to a third phase of the fighting on Gaza in the coming weeks. It added that this phase will include ending the ground operation in the Strip, reducing forces, and demobilizing reserve forces. The new phase will focus on heavy bombardment and the establishment of a buffer zone near the Strip's border, in line with a long-standing Israeli goal. It claimed that the Israeli army took control of most of the northern Gaza Strip. Battles with Palestinian resistance continue to rage both north and south of Gaza. Israeli report comes days after the Golani Brigade, the elite one, withdrew from Gaza to reorganize its ranks. The Golani Brigade faced huge losses while fighting Qassam brigades, the Quds brigades, and other groups entrenched across the Strip. According to a retired Israeli general, the elite force lost a quarter of its troops. So they're getting their butts kicked. Yemen is kicking the butts of basically the entire U.S. Fleet of vassal states that have attempted to support Israel's onslaught of Gaza. Yemen and the Houthis have essentially made quick work of them, and now the resistance inside of Gaza are making quick work of the IDF. But the conflict is not over. There is no ceasefire. There is no ending to the bombardment of Gaza. So what that means is that Ansar Allah is going to continue to do what they're doing right now, which is continuing this blockade and putting economic hurt on the US, the Israeli, European, Western backers, and any state that decides to come to the aid of Israel. And this is a huge development. We are seeing the tides change. We're talking about the Houthis leading Yemen, one of the poorest, most impoverished, most war-torn and beleaguered countries in the world, making huge progress, right? And the blows keep coming. The blows keep coming. According to DD Geopolitics, friend of the show, after 9 years, all factions in the Yemeni civil war have reached an agreement to work towards a permanent settle to end the conflict. This is according to the United Nations. A special rapporteur of the UN to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, said the warring factions, including the Houthis and internationally recognized Yemeni government, have agreed on 3 basic steps toward peace: a permanent ceasefire, the improvement of basic living conditions throughout the country, and an inclusive political process under UN supervision. So this has occurred during this blockade. So it's obvious that this blockade has not had negative effects on Yemen. It's having positive. This is a report from December 23rd. So the blockade has been massively effective. The Houthis are scoring huge victories, both for themselves and for the Palestinian people, by standing up to the entire fleet of Israel's backers and really putting a dent on them economically and militarily. There's a reason why the collective West refuses to strike. They refuse to strike. Um, they refuse to strike uh, Ansar Allah. They refuse to open this up into a wider war because they know what will happen if that were to occur. They would lose. The United States has acknowledged it cannot defeat Iran. It cannot even defeat the Houthis. How can they defeat the Houthis now when they couldn't do it in Yemen during the Saudi invasion? They couldn't do it. And Saudi Arabia won't even pick up their calls about, hey, would you restart that conflict? Can you help us weaken them a bit? They won't even answer them. This is the United States showing itself as worse than a paper tiger. It is worse than a paper tiger. Much worse. It is much weaker than that. It is nothing but a feather in the wind that is being blown away by the forces of history. This is the gift that Ansar Allah gave us on this holiday season. They gave us the gift of exposing the United States as a paper tiger. We've seen this in Ukraine against Russia. We've seen the United States empire meeting its match in Ukraine as they try to use Ukraine as a proxy to defeat Russia. It backfired mightily. What they're doing now in Operation Prosperity Guardian is backfiring mightily. They're not going to be able to push back Ansar Allah. They're not going to be able to back Israel as it threatens a regional conflict over its genocidal rampage in Gaza. They're not going to be able to do it. All of this is pointing to an eventual massive strategic defeat for Israel, the IDF, for the United States and the NATO axis. That's what it's all pointing to. It's only a matter, just like Ukraine, it's only a matter of when. And then how are they going to tie up the knot and give us a different gift? To give us basically, like in the movies, where you get a gift and there's a ticking bomb in it. That's what they're going to try to present to us. They're going to say, we didn't actually lose. It's okay. This is actually how you should look at it. The United States protected freedom of navigation. We did what we could. And now you need to digest a bigger military budget, which Joe Biden just signed off on. And you're going to need to digest the next maneuver to try and weasel their way out of a defeat, essentially, meaning more war. So while the defeat is coming and the setbacks are very real, the United States, of course, and its NATO allies and its consortium of warmongering states making up a tiny, tiny fraction of the world population, are going to be searching for the next opportunity. This is just a setback in that agenda, and it's why we need to reject those gifts, that propaganda, that gift-wrapped propaganda that's a ticking time bomb exploding in our faces when the next war happens and we all suffer the consequences of it economically, politically, militarily. We all suffer from it in some way. So that's what we need to watch out for as Yemen, impoverished but yet prideful, heroic Yemen, strikes an utter blow to the American empire and its aims to back the Israeli Zionist entity by any means necessary. All right, everybody. So we got 2,000 people watching. We'll move on to the next story very soon. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, everyone, on to the Rumble community as well. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas if you're into that kind of thing. Happy holidays. Happy New Year coming up. Okay. We got a lot to get to. Keep hitting that like button if you're on YouTube. Of course, if you're on Rumble and Rockfin, likes are also good. All right, so I'm going to take a little glass of water, and then we'll get to the last story. Okay. This one won't be as yeah, we're going to talk about China. We're going to talk about Taiwan. There's some new developments there. And yeah, we're going to talk about how this war aim on China is not over, is not concluded, and actually it's set to escalate. All right. And then we'll have some fun. That'll probably last another 20, 25 minutes. And then we'll go into we'll probably end here around 11 p.m. Eastern. All right, everybody. So we got 2,000 people still watching. Keep hitting that like button to ensure you all stick around and to ensure that that more people see this in the algorithm. Please also put some consideration into going to the video description and supporting this channel on Patreon or Substack or PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee or YouTube if you want to become a YouTube member. All of that is very much appreciated on this holiday season. Okay. So let's get started. Last story, 1983 still here. Let's keep hitting that like button so we can continue to boost it. But this should be a good way to conclude the evening. All right. Or at least in terms of the stories. What China is doing with regard to Taiwan, the United States cannot wrap their head around. The United States has been preparing for war against China via a Taiwan proxy for many years now, and that has not changed one bit. Soon in 2024, early 2024, we're going to see another election on the Straits of Taiwan. The political authority in Taiwan, which has autonomy, they are not their own state, but they have the autonomy to hold elections and elect leaders that they see as fit for them. They are going to elect a new president after a sweeping November 2022 defeat of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party on the island, which saw Tsai Ing-wen have to resign as the head of the Democratic Progressive Party, and she was unable to run for president again. So it's Lai Ching-te who is going to lead the party should he win. Now, what China is doing militarily is constantly on the minds of the United States and on the minds of Taiwan separatists. So here you have, leading into the holiday season, Taiwan reporting more Chinese military activity as the election approaches. Taiwan reported Chinese warplanes and warships around the island, including aircraft crossing the sensitive media line of the Taiwan Strait, as Beijing's military activities come within 3 weeks before Taiwan votes. The democratically governed Taiwan, which China claims as its territory, has complained for 4 years of regular Chinese military patrols and drills near the island. Campaigning is underway for Taiwan's January 13th presidential and parliamentary polls. Relations with China are a point of contention. The Defense Ministry of Taiwan said that at 1:30 it had detected J-10, J-11, and J-16 fighters, as well as warning aircraft operating in the airspace north, middle, south of Taiwan, crossing a median line or areas close by, working with Chinese warships to carry out joint combat readiness patrols. Okay, so the median line once served as an unofficial barrier of two sides, but Chinese planes regularly fly over it. And it says it sent its own forces, Taiwan did, to monitor. China has not commented. But now, meanwhile, the median line is not recognized by anybody. It's not recognized by international law. It's not recognized by China. Taiwan doesn't really have the ability to recognize anything because it's not a state. The one China principle is enshrined in international law, Resolution 2751. And there's also the fact that the United States and China have numerous agreements indicating and cementing one China. But it's no coincidence that we're talking about it like this now, okay? The US and China are finally holding military talks after more than a year. You have US's top military officer speaking with China's counterpart on December 21st in a video call between the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force General Charles Q. Brown, who spoke with General Liu Jianli of the People's Liberation Army Chief Joints of Staff. Brown emphasized the need for more communications between the two sides of risky aerial intercepts. And General Brown discussed the importance of working together to manage competition, avoid miscalculations, and direct line of communications. So essentially, this was a pretty big deal because I don't know if you remember from back in February 2023, early with the whole balloon incident, the United States had already not only had already cut off talks. This first occurred during the August 2022 debacle of Nancy Pelosi visiting the island, but but after that, China cut off military to military ties, which were just reestablished after a huge period. It appeared that China wanted to, before the balloon incident, the spy balloon incident that shook the world in February 2023. Before that, it appeared that China wanted to reopen these talks. And then, of course, things went completely awry. Now they're actually talking. So it's no coincidence that there would be this so-called activity that really is a nothing burger. China has the right to fly its planes over its own waters and territories, which, if you know anything about the Taiwan Straits and China, you understand that that median line literally it crosses over a terrain that China has every right to fly over. It is its sovereign territory, and the One China principle says it's its sovereign territory. So to move on, we've had multiple reports that China has been confronting the United States on Taiwan. NBC reported that the United States, during the Biden administration's meeting with Xi Jinping, was confronted by Xi around the question of Taiwan, where he said that China would reunify with Taiwan, but preferred to do it peacefully. This wasn't a confrontation at all. And here you see the United States walking back their own report. Gina Raimondo said the U.S. did not see any tonal change from China on Taiwan after she was speaking at a briefing at the White House. So this is after media reports that Chinese President Xi Jinping told Joe Biden that Beijing will reunify Taiwan with China. So Gina Raimondo is basically saying, not so fast. There's no real change here. So it was really just a report to scare us. But it comes again amid these elections. They're trying to make us believe that China is trying to essentially manipulate the situation. And that the combination of military and diplomatic maneuvers are the ways in which China is attempting to do this. And this completely obscures the fact that the United States is at the root of all the problems, the conflict that is brewing here in this part of the world. NBC News and other media outlets reported on Wednesday Xi told Biden in a recent summit in San Francisco, Beijing will reunify Taiwan with mainland China, but the timing has not yet been decided. Raimondo said that she doesn't see any change. I was in the meeting. President Xi didn't say anything to us that he hasn't said before. It was a good discussion between two world leaders. It was frank, positive, direct. Taiwan came up, but no new news. So it was a nothing burger. But they want us to believe there is a threat here. All right. And Nikki Asia, if you want a good idea of what the voice of the collectivist is really saying, go to Nikki Asia. They have an article here where they talk about the election. And it says, as the Taiwan presidential race tightens in the final weeks, China is stepping up trade curbs in an apparent attempt to influence the key vote. All right. So for those of you who don't know, Nikki Asia is an incredibly unreliable, but it is, I mean, it's a flagship Japanese media outlet. It's incredibly anti-China. And if you read it, you get a good understanding of really what real China hawks believe in the professional media class. And that's what they're talking about here. The Taiwan presidential frontrunner Lai Ching-te lead over main opposition rival has narrowed, and it sets the stage for a close race in the final weeks of a pivotal vote. Lai's ticket, representing the ruling party, leads with 37.3% of support, followed by Hao Yui's of opposition Kuomintang, the Guomindang KMT, with 33.4%, according to a survey conducted December 19th to December 21st by pollster My Formosa. Ko Wen-ji of the Taiwan People's Party trails with 17.7%. So, as recently as December 1st, Lai had 37.8%, who was at 29%. So the gap is closing. All right. KMT has been catching up rapidly since late November after an end of opposition unity talks, said Wen Ti-sung, a non-resident at the NATO Atlantic Council think tank. The tightening race means candidates will be campaigning intensely in the run-up to the vote. They're competing in the January 13th presidential race as Taiwan chooses its next head of state and lawmakers while facing China's aggression. President Tsai Ing-wen's government is fending off Chinese military incursions amid recent reports of election meddling and disinformation. You see what they're trying to do here? They're trying to connect what China is doing militarily with the elections. They're trying to say that China never ruled Taiwan, and it claims it as its own, has threatened military attack. You see, this is what they really want us to believe, as they're obscuring the fact that the separatist position is actually weakening, and that the United States itself is not claiming from its own meeting with Xi Jinping, Biden and Xi Jinping, that there is any indication that China is moving militarily to take Taiwan and to reunify. But they're essentially saying here, all right, they don't even give you very much here. They don't even talk about the economic report. So that's how that's how crass this all is. They say that trade curbs, they didn't even mention trade curbs once in the article. I didn't even have to read it. This is how pathetic this all is. But what China is doing is actually the when it comes to this conflict, it's more aligned with reality than anything the United States and its Taiwan separatist forces can tell us. What China is actually saying is that they need to be prepared for the risks caused by secessionist forces. Now, when they say prepared, they don't mean start a war, but China is definitely prepared to go to war over this issue if the United States and its separatists on the island provoke it. But as Gina Raimondo said, and I think this is in league with the current U.S. position in the world, that China has not changed its tone. And I think primarily the reason for these comments is because the United States is in no position. What China has done has actually worked, which is bide its time, ensure its military preparedness, increase military expenditure without sacrificing its own domestic economy, and not hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst while taking care of oneself. That is what the United States never does. The United States does the opposite of that. It depletes and just takes away everything it can take from its domestic economy, puts it into war, starts to prepare for war with the hope that it will be successful, and then it ends up being a disaster. So this is what the Global Times had to say. The Chinese mainland needs to be prepared for the risk caused by Taiwan's secessionist forces and the interference of the U.S. on the Taiwan question, as the U.S. is trying to use the island to provoke military conflict between the mainland and the island to contain the development of China, said experts from both sides of the straits on Saturday. Chinese modernization requires a relatively long-term, peaceful, and stable international and regional environment, but the Taiwan question has increasingly become a variable affecting our national security, said Wang Zheqi, former deputy director of Association for Relations across the Taiwan Straits, saying this at the 2024 Global Times annual conference. For the long term, we have preparations in place to contain and destroy the secessionist attempt at Taiwan independence, but uncertainty still exists, so we have to be prepared to prevent the risk. Chao Yang-chung, president of Sun Yat-sen School in Taiwan and a member of Taiwan's major opposition party, the KMT, said at the conference that during its great power competition with China, The U.S. has tried many approaches, including trade war and sci-tech war, but these will also cause damage to the U.S. When it plays the Taiwan card, the U.S. is clearly profiting from it. In order to preserve hegemony, Washington will consider using puppets on the island to provoke conflict with the mainland, but it won't let the regional leader of the island decide when and how to do it. So the U.S. is trying to discipline the DPP authorities, including the current regional leader, Tsai Ing-wen, and the DPP candidate for the upcoming election, Lai Ching-te. So they're aware. China is not stupid. They are aware of what is going on, right? These are prominent authorities in the KMT. These are Chinese experts. They know what's happening. They know how China is preparing for this kind of conflict. And so this election is going to be critical. It's likely that the DPP will win, but it's likely that they're not going to win by a very large margin. And it's likely that sentiment around secession is going to continue to be low. Okay. It's going to continue to be low. This has been shown, okay, over and over and over again, that there is not a lot of appetite for independence, so to speak. Okay. That those who want to maintain the status quo or maintain the status quo and decide at a later date represent the vast majority of people on the island. And here is a major poll from the Election Study Center, which this is a Chinese institution. It is a Taiwan-based institution. And here's what they had to say. 32.1% of those polled between 1994 and 2023, this is a longitudinal research study, said that maintain the status quo indefinitely. 32%. 28.6% say maintain the status quo, decide at a later date. Well, that's more than 60%. And then you have the green here, maintain the status quo, move toward independence. That still means status quo. Status quo meaning one China principle. So you have over 80% wanting to maintain the status quo. Everyone else remains in the minority. So what China is doing is absolutely the right thing, which is to patiently follow its long-standing doctrine on this issue, which is the one China principle. That is its long-standing policy. That is the policy it adopted after it was recognized by the United Nations in 1971. And that is the policy that it has negotiated with the United States for normalization of ties with that country. That is the policy that the United Nations recognizes. All right. That is the policy that is the fundamental one that should not be violated. That is the one that the United States continues to violate by meddling in Taiwan's affairs through arms sales, through manipulating elections, supporting color revolutionist forces, supporting the Democratic Progressive Party, and of course, through ongoing military escalations in the Taiwan Straits, in the South China Sea. This is what is at stake here in this election. But it's quite clear that the United States has no leg to stand on, that their position is actually becoming weaker and weaker. They continue to sound the alarm almost daily over Chinese military aggression. But China is simply conducting military activities around its own self-defense in preparation for a proxy war, which the United States is itself responsible for. The United States stopped funding and arming the secessionist forces in Taiwan. Just like in Ukraine, this would end immediately. China would then divert its military arsenal once again, for its own security, as it is doing here. it would no longer need to worry about military conflict on the Taiwan Straits if it weren't for the United States' continued involvement in this realm. So the United States is the one that is going to be rudely awakened. All right. Rudely awakened. Resolution 275A. I might have said 2751 before. The UN resolution that admitted China into as the legitimate government of the United Nations. That is the only one that we should be following with regard to the Taiwan question. And any concern about about China's military provocations or military activities in this part of the world should be ignored as flat out alarmism. The point is that the United States has no right to be doing anything that it is doing around the Taiwan Straits. Freedom of navigation, no right. Taiwan is not an independent country, and the United States doesn't have any right to do this anywhere in the region, let alone the Taiwan Straits, which are a fundamental part of China. China will reunify with Taiwan peacefully. China will resolve this question in a manner that works for all sides. China has already done this with Hong Kong, with Macau. China has many special administrative regions, those being two, where it allows for a great amount of autonomy in a one China, one system, one country, two systems policy, like in Hong Kong. That is what is on the way for Taiwan should it smarten up, really. Should the authorities smarten up on Taiwan, should the leadership change and begin pursuing what is vastly beneficial for the people on the island, for the Chinese people on the island, and the Chinese people on the mainland, which is a reunified China with no separatism to speak of. That is the case everywhere in the world, wherever separatism, we see it crop up. We see it now cropping up in Serbia. We've seen it in Ukraine. We have seen it over and over and over again. Separatism, color revolutionists, secessionist forces that align with the West, that align with the United States, that align with NATO, and they end up tearing apart the fabric of stability, causing economic mayhem, causing military provocations and conflicts that only destroy the livelihoods of the people, make the world unsafe, bring the most powerful countries in the world closer to a conflagration that could go nuclear. These are not forces that we should be supporting. These are forces we should be condemning. China is not the aggressor here. China is the one attempting to resolve this peacefully. And now it is up to the people on the island to decide whether they want to continue forward along the status quo toward reunification or whether they want to be either on a slow or rapid path of becoming a vassal of the United States, which the United States likes to call its unsinkable aircraft carrier. The whole empire is sinking, baby. There is nothing unsinkable. And so it is important, I think, for the United States, for its vassals in Taiwan, those forces that are willing to saddle up with the United States to essentially get the picture and get the lesson here. And the lesson is that there is no change with regard to this conflict. China has been moving towards ultimate objective reunification, and now it is only a matter of time, given the state of the United States is absolutely deteriorating. Its position as an empire is fading and sinking, and its problems are mounting. It's only a matter of time before the tide of history moves in the direction of reunification. And when that occurs, we are going to see, I think, a massive escalation on the part of the United States toward war. And that's what we have to be diligently prepared for as we move in to 2024 and beyond. All right, everyone, that's the content for tonight. We have 2,000 viewers. Those 2,000 viewers, please do continue to hit that like button, share this stream, subscribe to the channel, hit that notifications bell. And of course, the best way to support this work is on Patreon. There's other places to support, but Patreon's the best place. I'm going to shout out. There's a lot of people. We're going to shout out the super chats. We're going to shout out Patreon members, all that good stuff. Okay. All right. Happy holidays, everyone. You know, I'm not a big holiday person. I never have been. I didn't grow up in a household. I grew up in a household that celebrated. But you know, I think if you are, let's say, a working class person, if you grow up maybe in tougher straits and in hard conditions, holidays for many reasons, people for interpersonal suffering, family issues, just mental health, economic depravity, toxic stress, we could call it. There are many reasons why the holidays aren't really so cheery all of the time, right? That lump of coal feels like a weight upon our neck, because we are going through hard times, whether it's interpersonally, whether it's psychologically, whether it's economically, whether it's socially, or whether it's all of the above. And usually it's all of the above. So, with all that said, I hope you all are taking care of yourselves this holiday season. I hope you all are getting R&R. I hope you all finding some way to rejuvenate in that old Chinese language, right? They're going through national rejuvenation. I hope we can go through our own kind of rejuvenations in terms of our own social, political, and spiritual health in this coming new year, because we need to discipline ourselves as best we can for the long haul amid what is going to be, and we always have to acknowledge, hard and challenging times. So while I say happy holidays, I know that these times are not necessarily that happy for a lot of people. And there's huge contradiction between the cheery vibes that Hallmark and the corporations push on us and the actual situation we find ourselves right in front of us in our day to day, extending all the way out into the global situation. So I just want to put that out there because this is the time in the program where we talk a little bit more candidly. All right. And I just want to put that out there because this is something I've struggled with mightily over the years, especially, you know, as I've gone through many losses, especially as life changes, especially as we confront a lot of the things that we've gone through over the course of, you know, this ongoing struggle. So, of course, you know, subscribe on Patreon, subscribe on Substack, become a YouTube member, go to the video description, and there are one-time options too, buy me a coffee, PayPal. All of that is so much appreciated in this holiday season. It helps keep this program going. But really, what I want for you is a restorative, a healthy, and as happy, given the circumstances, possible holiday as can be expected, and that you all continue to fight for what's right, for peace, for self-determination, for economic justice, for the power of the people, true power of the people, not all of this BS we get from both mainstream and even independent media outlets alike. We get a lot of distortions. We get a lot of, you know, moving about the political spectrum, but we should be more focused on our collective well-being, raising the standards for people of what it means to achieve real justice, real peace. All right. So let's shout out first the super chats. All right. Hud says, I'm a little drunk. God bless your work. Thank you. It appears they are worried. Yes. Thank you, Hud. The empire is indeed trembling. I should have made that the title, honestly. Thank you so much for that. We have Valley S, a member of YouTube, a moderator, and a regular donor on through super chats. Thank you so much, Valley, for all of your support. Casey Anthony got away with it. Nearly all viable Ukrainian males had already been kidnapped and forced into service. It can only mean females, which will be a massive blow to the booming Ukrainian mail order. Oh man. Um Indeed. Um Ukraine is just a mess. I mean, this is what happens when you go through nonstop shock therapy for how many years now since the fall of the Soviet Union? I remember talking now, oh God, 33 years. It's an absolute disaster, right? So Ukraine has been a basket case for so long, one of the poorest countries in Europe, Eurasia, we could call it, and now it's beyond the pale. It's a point of no return almost, and it'll take many years and also quite a bit of political and economic transformation to rectify that, and it will take a lot of Russia's help. So thank you so much for that. Black Tie said nothing, gave me a super sticker. Thank you. Hand Standish said, great journalism, Danny. Please keep updating us on Gaza. Thank you from Australia. Thank you. So Australia, wow, far away. Appreciate that. Glad you're tuning in your morning time on this Christmas day. So Merry Christmas to you if you're a celebrator of Christmas. Casey Anthony got away with it. Say, what would America do if Mexico were to have Russia and China build military bases on their northern border? Would U.S. do the same as Russia now? No. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? Russia was willing to assist Cuba in defending itself from U.S.-backed terrorists. The Bay of Pigs showed that. And so the Soviet Union said, well, we want to leverage the fact that the United States is moving its military arsenal closer to our borders. This, I think, what happened to do with Turkey. So we're going to send some missiles. We're going to send we're going to send part of our arsenal to Cuba. We're going to do that. And we'll see what the United States does. The United States was very close to a nuclear war with the Soviet Union over this, despite the fact that Cuba gave the Soviet Union permission, right? So really the United States had no say, but the United States reacted very hawkishly. And some people credit John F. Kennedy. I'm not going to really do that. Let's just say that the U.S. political establishment was divided on this, and it ended up that the United States did not pull the trigger, which would have been absolutely devastating. So what would the United States do now? We don't even want to know. It would be disastrous. There would be strikes. There would be immediate retaliation. And that means possibly war, like a real war, possibly nuclear war. Here we go. Misha says $10. Nothing. Thank you so much for that very generous super chat. Notary, yes, who's also a moderator here. Thank you so much, Notary. Wonderful message, Danny. Thank you. Happy holidays. Thank you so much. The Iranian Putin gifted 5 memberships. You can do that as well if you want to give 5 memberships to people that you know through YouTube. You can give more than 5, however many. Then they get a free month, and if they can decide if they want to come back. That's so generous of you, Iranian Putin. Yara Jamal says $2.99 super sticker. Thanks so much for the super sticker. Iranian Putin again. Merry Christmas, Danny, and everyone. Thank you so much. Happy holidays to you as well. Arlene Chambers, thank you, Danny, for the stream and all the work you've done throughout the year. Thank you so much. And then we have the Iranian Putin becoming a member as well. Thanks so much for that. Really appreciated. Arlene, thanks so much for that. Thank you. I've tried my best to stay consistent. I've tried my best to stay principled in these times of utter opportunism. It's everywhere. It drives me nuts. The media is a tough place to navigate because you do have to manage both trying to grow within the mechanisms that are there for you while also maintaining your integrity. That is not a hard thing to do, but it is something, not an easy thing to do, but it's something I try to do each and every time I come on here. So we are going to now shout out because we got some Patreon folks as well. Okay. So we have Panagas. I won't say full names. I don't like to do that. But Panagas became a new member. Thank you, Panagas, of Patreon. Also today, before we got started, I had Doug come on and House Duck come on. And Charles Wood. So I had 4 new Patreon subscribers today. That's the best way to support this program is on Patreon. It's a great gift. You can go annually, which means it's just a one-time payment for 1 year. Then you can decide when the year is up whether you want to come back or not. You can monthly. YouTube is monthly, so $3.99 per month if you want to do that. Substack, you can do annual or monthly, and of course, there's the one-time options. And I see some more super chats. Misha says, "From Russia with love." Thank you so much for that. That's a really generous super chat. I really appreciate that. We have DeBeard. Thanks for what you have done for peace. Merry Christmas. Thank you, DeBeard. Appreciate that. So much generosity coming out of all of you. I mean, this is really humbling. I am not. I do not do what some other folks may do on here, bravado. I try to take more after the Houthis, after those oppressed peoples, those leaders of the multipolar world. I mean, you see Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Ansar Allah, Iran, the resistance, and Hezbollah, even far-flung countries, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. You see all across the multipolar world, wherever, Eritrea, wherever they are, these leaders are humble. These people are humble. They are not here to strike a pose for likes in order to increase their own personal gain. They're trying to make the world better. Whatever I gain personally is to maintain stability as best as possible as I continue this work. So your kindness and your generosity all goes back toward that. It is not a venture of profiteering, but it has been quite gratifying and humbling, the fact that the longer I've done this, the more capable I have become professionally and financially for making it happen. And so that has been quite gratifying. That has been amazing. And it's all because of you all. So that is one of the best holiday gifts I have received over the course of my time doing this. And I always like to reflect on that at this time of the year. So I thank you all. I love you all. I appreciate you all for being in this struggle together. We have Philip Blair saying Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. To Beard, shout out to Danny. Thank you so much again for another contribution. Um, so I have about a couple. I'll stay on for another 5 to 10 more minutes. I will end at 11 p.m. sharp today. All right. We just got 17:20 on here. Um, so I could take any questions, rapid fire. I don't have any Patreon questions, I don't think. Let me see. No questions from Patreon members. I see here no comments. All right, none from Substack or YouTube. So, uh, questions. We got some trolls in the chat still. Let me hide that comment. Rito's asking, why am I so uneducated? That's so funny. uh, Hilarious. Stanny, did you get an offer from CGTN? Did I get an offer from C? Oh, interesting question, Notary. Well, I mean, I've been working and collaborating with CGTN more on like a freelance basis. I'm considered a special commentator because I had been doing it for so long. So, to be honest, I haven't had really any time to do much for CGTN of late. But I do have what I'm called a special commentator for them, meaning that I can receive modest remuneration for articles. I've always had that with them, where I can submit op-eds for a small, a small payment. It's not free, thankfully. And so that's been very helpful at times. I've had very little time to write of late, so I really haven't done it. And then the special commentator role, I can supply them videos, or they can ask me for videos, and then they'll reimburse me for that. The last one I did was on the Belt and Road Forum, I believe it was. So, it's mostly freelance work. Sometimes they request things from me. A lot of the times I'm not available. So it's not really a job or an offer, so to speak, but it is a relationship that I value highly. And I'm not afraid to say that. I mean, I think that they, um, do good work around the English language media coverage of China. And if I can use my expertise and what I have to spread that message, then sure, I think it works. And I think the McCarthyism around RT and CGTN has been absolutely heinous and disgusting. So thank you, Notary, for that question. Wow, we have more super chats coming in. We have Casey Anthony got away with it. Joe Biden is Brix's best friend. Thanks so much for that. Okay, thank you so much for that. Joe Biden is Brix's best friend. You know what? Donald Trump will then be Brix's best friend because I don't see Donald Trump. This is what is so frustrating. Okay, and I'm gonna get to some of these questions I see coming in. It's so frustrating to see a lot of people think that somehow political shifts in the US presidential arena, Congress, anything, but really in presidential terms, is going to change anything with regard to the multipolar world or BRICS in particular. No, 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 no. That's not going to happen. Donald Trump is not an advocate of multipolarity. He did, and this is not to say Casey Anthony got away with it, that you're saying this at all, because I do believe you are right. Joe Biden has been Brix's best friend. But I do see some people talking about Trump as some kind of, again, we're in this, what is this, the third iteration of this, 2016, 2020 now, thinking that he's going to change the calculus globally for the United States. And that's not going to happen. He acted and operated as a unipolarist, even if I believe his stances on things like Russia were not abhorrent. They were actually, if you wanted to look at them as positive, you could. But really, I saw them as realist in the sense that he had a strategy that was just different from how maybe the traditional neocons wanted to go about war at a particular stage in history. But Trump was very hawkish with Iran, nearly got the United States in a war with Iran, wanted to normalize Israel's relationship with all of the Arab monarchies, did a whole lot around sanctions, trying to overthrow Venezuela's government. I mean, we can go on and on and on. While Syria did not get better, even though there were talks about withdrawing troops, the sanctions got worse under Trump. And also whether it's the Korean situation, the peninsula, Syria, Afghanistan, he wasn't able to get the job done. And regardless of what you think of that, he's the commander in chief. You could say his hands are tied, all of this. If he was truly a stalwart of a multipolar world, he would get it done. And he's not. He's not. But nonetheless, Trump, I believe, would also be a really good friend of BRICS because I believe he would push in areas which would, let's say, Latin America and West Asia, which would then move those arenas closer to BRICS. And I think no matter what, it's a best case scenario for BRICS because it means that the United States, no matter who's in charge, is going to continue to push a unipolar agenda, which will not be tolerated for very much longer. I mean, that's the reality of this. So we have more coming in. We have Mio at PHX saying, Merry Christmas, Danny. Thanks for all you do. Going to Hanoi in February. Oh, nice. Nice, 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 nice. Um, well, how about you send me a message if you wanted to, meet up with some contacts, maybe give me part of your background. I would love to connect you. Anyone who's going to Vietnam with some interesting folks, especially in Hanoi. Chuck Searcy, who runs the Veterans for Peace chapter there. He's also just a really nice and intelligent guy who just knows his stuff politically, both in Vietnam and geopolitically. He's very astute. And there's some other folks out there that I got to meet up with in Hanoi. Send me a message, anyone who goes to Vietnam, if you can find a way, whether it's on X, whether it's tagging me in a comment, even on YouTube. I don't put my email on YouTube, even though I probably should, right? I probably should put my email for inquiries. Maybe I can do that right now, honestly, because I don't even remember how to do that. That's how that's how interesting it becomes to manage a channel. but I do think used to be, it always changes. It should be easy. Can I add my email? Oh yeah, here we go. All right, I'm gonna add my email now to my channel. All right, so you all are aware. Uh, okay, there we go. So I put my email there. If you're going to Vietnam or China, if you let me know your background, I can try my best. Of course, I might need to know a little bit more about you just to build some trust, because it's all about trust. But I would love to connect people to good folks out there if you're going out there. Um, so hit me up. The email should be in my channel bio information area, my about section. I can't believe I didn't have that before. Jeez. Running a channel is interesting stuff. Um, let's see. Anything else? Anything else? Did I see any other questions here that I can quickly answer for you before I head out tonight? I see some of the gifted new members. Thanks so much for that gift. um, let's see. Oh, someone said, who is this? This is an interesting comparison. Where is it? Philip said Biden is like LBJ. Trump is like Nixon. Interesting. A very interesting comparison. I believe there was a question on Venezuela in Guyana. That is like an ExxonMobil conflict. ExxonMobil controlling the oil of that region that has been in dispute, and that is a legacy of colonialism. My opinion on what's going to happen is I don't think, and I'm trying to find this question. I thought I saw it somewhere. I actually don't think there's going to be an out and out war. I think Venezuela is doing a great job. Um, I don't know if this is a question, but I'll keep it up so I see it. Where is the Guyana question? I can't find it. Oh well. So there was a question about Guyana. While things have escalated there over the course of many weeks recently, it seems like the Venezuelan authorities, Maduro, have done a great job in managing that conflict. I don't think there's going to be a hot conflict there, but I do see escalations probably on the way. There's always attempts. The United States is really desperate when it comes to Venezuela. The sanctions didn't work; they never do. But now they're trying to do it in this part, you could say war-torn region. It was outpost of colonialism, British colonialism. The United States through ExxonMobil is trying to maintain control there, and Venezuela is trying to resolve basically a crisis that should never have come about. And it is Venezuelan territory in retrospect, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think it's probably going to be a gradual process nonetheless. I don't see any I don't think the United States can handle any more major conflicts, honestly. And I don't think Venezuela is as weak as the mainstream media likes to portray it as. I think the military and the people of Venezuela are very much for their government for the most part, and that popular force is not going to allow for the kind of conflict the United States usually seeks. Visionary Vlog says, any hope for a ceasefire in Gaza? There's always hope. There's always hope. But anytime recently in the next, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, at this point, it seems like that's where the momentum is going. But I don't believe it's going to happen anytime soon. I believe that Israel is going to yeah, I believe Israel is going to continue its onslaught for a while. It's going to find different methods. It's probably going to taper off. There will probably be pauses in the fighting. But do I see a permanent ceasefire anytime soon? Not really. All right. in any event, lastly, I just want to say thank you to Dave Burt, Laura Boz over on Rockfin Community. I want to say thanks to all those on Rumble. All right, we're gonna wrap up now, I think. Oh, it says to people I cut out. I hope I came back. It looks like I'm on Rumble, so I hope I came back. People saying I've cut out. In any event, um, some people are saying they can't find my email. I saved it. I saved it. Let me see. I'm gonna view my channel and see if I can see it. So basically what you want to do is you want to, oh, look at that. It's not, oh yeah, here we go. So what you want to do is you want to go to my channel. Let me open it up. All right. How about that? If you want to get in touch with me, I can't say I'm going to be able to answer all emails, because one of the things I do is if you're a Patreon subscriber or on Substack or a YouTube member, correspondence is through there, or you can sign up on X as well. And what I do is I follow you and I do answer questions if you send me DMs. But I do prioritize those paid members just because I have to find a way to set a boundary. But if you do have a pressing question, something that you need urgently, you're going on a trip, I try to do my best to be helpful in that way. So I'm going to go to my channel here. You want to find the email address. You want to go here at the about section, which is just like where it says uh, about, and then you go to channel details and you can view the email address. All right, it should just come up there. All right, so I hope that helps. Thank you so much again, Philip. Israeli dissident professor who studies propaganda, good books and talks. Narit Peled Elenan. Yeah, that sounds a good idea. Send me guest suggestions, seriously. I love guest suggestions because I'm always looking for new guests. So yeah, we've had a good time here. Charlotte Chiba left a comment on uh I'll pull it up actually on my email. Let me see if I can do that here. Yes. All right. So here is a Substack comment. All right. Oh, I'm zooming in the wrong thing. Paid member, season greetings. A brief note. Thank you so much for all of your excellent work in keeping us informed. I'm going to actually hide this comment from you, Philip. Thank you. The current geopolitical situation take place regarding Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, especially the Israel genocide of the Palestinian people. I hope you and yours are able to take time and enjoy some good cheers. Always with appreciation and respect. Thank you so much for that. Comments. All right. Ralph, hell you watch. Hell you watch. Anyway, thank you so much. All right, everybody. Great time tonight. I don't think I'm gonna answer any more questions. Dana's having fun custom emojis. I need help with that. If anyone wants to help me with custom emojis, man, that's fine. That's fine. I would love that. I'm just man, it's just hard work, There's a lot of work to do, and some things I cannot get to. I need a producer. I need a real producer. I get help from folks that I want to just give a big shout out at the end here to DD Geopolitics. They've helped me out a huge amount. I mean, DD Geopolitics, they helped me get off the ground on Telegram, which you can find in the video description, t.me/DannyHaiFong. Always subscribe to Telegram. Always get on that free newsletter on Substack, too, if you can't become a paid member. Links in the video description, just FYI. I have a hard time promoting everything, as you can see. But Telegram, they helped me out a lot there to get me off the ground there because they respected my work. They have a great graphic designer who helps me out and is willing to take kind of a pay as I can arrangement. and that has helped mightily with the thumbnails. I got some good commentary on today's thumbnail. You should thank Area over at DD Geopolitics Podcast for all of that, and support them. Subscribe to their YouTube, GD Geopolitics, and watch their great programming as well, because they do a lot of good stuff, and they deserve all of the support. They're hard workers too. They do a lot. The fact that their graphic designer is willing to take the time to help me with my channel in that important key area. When the person who you may know as Loa Socialisti on here was unable to continue to assist, that was just huge. In any event, everybody, happy holidays. All right. Before I go, I want you to like the stream, just to let you know. Well, we've got a good ratio now, so if you just haven't liked it, just like it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell. Maybe you'll get notified. Go to the video description. Go to Telegram, t.me/DannyHaiphong, Substack. Both links are in the video description. That's the best place to get notified, honestly. That's where I notify every time I have a stream. And lastly, consider supporting this channel as a gift to independent media. Patreon is the best place, of course. You get the most perks there. But there's Substack, there's YouTube membership, there is one-time options like Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal, all of which are great options, and more. So I appreciate all of it. The generous super chats today were very humbling. Thank you all so much. You're not going to see me probably until the latter end of December, going toward the new year. Some things I have in the works that I'm thinking about. I don't know if it's going to happen. People have really busy schedules. I want to do a year, what to look forward to with Ukraine, with either the Duran I'm trying to get on, or with Brian Berletic. Maybe I'll have, I don't think it'll be a panel this time, but I'll have 2 separate streams doing that. Hopefully, if they can. I know that they've had, everyone's been very busy. I've been trying to get George Galloway back on the show, but unfortunately, with, he does a lot of work. I've been traveling, all kinds of stuff. But all those things will be in the works, as well as continuing to, do what I do. I'll continue to do streams. I am studying for a licensure exam out here, and maybe doing a little bit less in the month of January, probably more so in the month of February. Things might slow down a little bit here. In terms of the frequency of streams, probably have to be relegated to once per week max, as I have to get down to studying. But with all that said, continue to expect more great programming here. I have other ideas. I can't even think of all the ideas that I have, honestly. Michael Hudson. People have been asking for him like a lot. So I am going to hopefully have him back on the show. So, I think, we should have a good time coming up in the new year, 2024. And I really appreciate all of you for all of your support, everything that you have given back to me as I have built up this channel. We're going to have a good time in 2024, the best we can, fighting back against the misinformation that this empire tries to impose upon us. With all that said, everybody, I'm going to head out. Good night. I wish you all well. Have a happy holiday. I'll probably see you before the new year. But for those of you who aren't able to attend that one, I'll say also Happy New Year, at least Happy Western New Year. And I will see you all again very soon. Good night.